My wife announced to me that she will live with her ex-husband for a month. The humiliation is just off the chart, and I won't just sit still and wait for her return. I sat at the breakfast table, sipping my coffee while the morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. Brenda was across from me, her eyes scanning the local paper as she absently stirred her tea. Karen sat to my right, scrolling through her phone, her face set in the usual look of disinterest. The clinking of utensils and the occasional rustle of the newspaper were the only sounds filling the room. 5 years of marriage. And our mornings had fallen into a rhythm I found both comforting and fragile. Brenda had been through so much before I met her. Her divorce from Marcus was nothing short of a nightmare, a chaotic mess she had to claw her way out of after he was arrested for beating her during one of his drunken rages. It left scars, both visible and unseen. She rarely spoke of those days, but the tension that crept into her voice whenever his name came up said enough. I came into her life a few months after that chapter closed. We met through mutual friends at a dinner party neither of us really wanted to attend. Something clicked that night. Maybe it was the way her laughter made the room feel lighter, or the way she listened, really listened when I spoke. A year of dating later, we tied the knot. Karen, now 18 years old, came as part of the package. I knew going in that being a stepfather wasn't going to be easy, especially with a girl as guarded as Karen. She was polite enough, but there was a wall between us that I couldn't seem to scale. I don't blame her. Not really. I'm not her father, and I've never tried to be. I've done my best to adjust, to find a place in their lives that feels right for all of us. I take care of them, love them, and I've accepted that Karen may never look at me as anything more than her mother's husband. And you know what? I'm fine with that. For a few months now, Brenda has felt like a stranger in our home. The warmth we once shared has been replaced with a growing distance. The little things have piled up, reduced intimacy, fewer conversations. And her constant claim of being too tired for anything. Then there's her phone, always in her hand, her eyes glued to the screen. The way it's hastily put away whenever I enter the room hasn't gone unnoticed. None of it has. I'm not a fool. These are red flags, bright as day. At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was something I'd done or failed to do. But as the weeks turned into months, it became impossible to ignore the nagging voice in the back of my head. So, I did what I had to do. I hired a private investigator. $2,000 later, I had my answers. A good investigator doesn't come cheap, but knowing the truth is worth every cent. The truth that she's been seeing Marcus, her ex-husband, the same man who destroyed her once, the one I thought she'd left behind for good. And now, today's the day. I know what Brenda has planned for me. Then, like clockwork, it started. Brenda folded the paper and placed it neatly on the table, her hands lingering on its edges as though searching for courage in its creases. She looked at me, her lips pressed tightly together before she finally spoke. "Brian, I have something to tell you," she said, her voice unusually soft. I set my coffee mug down carefully, my eyes fixed on hers. "Oh, yes, dear, please go ahead," I said, keeping my tone steady, almost inviting. She hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the corner of the tablecloth. "I'll be out for a month," she said, the words falling into the silence like a stone into water. I stayed calm, leaning forward. "Slightly." "Okay," I replied simply. Her shoulders tensed, and she shrugged again, as though bracing for something. "I mean, I'll be out for a month. I'll be staying with Marcus," she said, her voice firmer now, as if the repetition lent her some courage. "It's his birthday month and I want to make it good for him." I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of her words settle. My expression didn't change, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Still, I forced myself to remain measured as I replied. "So," I began, my voice laced with quiet intensity. "What will you be doing there? Cleaning his house, cooking his food, and having sex with him? Can he not afford to hire a hooker to do that and feel good? Why does my lawfully wedded wife have to be that hooker maid?" I said, my tone sharp as I sipped my coffee, refusing to let my emotions get the better of me. Her eyes widened, and she shot back. "What the hell are you talking about? I am no hooker or a maid. I'll be there like his wife." I set my coffee cup down, my movements deliberate and slow, trying to keep my voice steady. "But you are married to me. Would doing whatever it is you plan to do with him not be cheating on me? Cheating on our marriage?" She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "No, because I told you. So, it's not cheating." I nodded, the absurdity of her logic sinking in like a weight. "Okay, so what do you expect from me then? Wait here for 30 days while my wife is off playing house with another man?" Her frustration boiled over, her voice tinged with exasperation. "Oh, come on, Brian. I have some desires that I need to fulfill, and only Marcus can do that for me." I shot back without missing a beat. "Like tying you to a bed and flogging you with a whip? Are you talking about those desires?" I knew all about her desires because I had seen the texts and the videos. The images were seared into my mind, things I could never unsee. I kept my expression calm, but inside, my anger simmered just below the surface. I looked straight into her eyes and said, "So you have desires? What about mine? Do I get to take care of my desires?" Her frustration was palpable as she threw her hands up. "Fine, do whatever you want, but once I'm back, you'll be a faithful husband again." I leaned forward, my tone cold and deliberate. "And what if my desires aren't satisfied in 30 days? What happens then? What if I find a better source of satisfaction, one that makes me not want to come back to you? Would that be fine with you?" Her face twisted with irritation, but before she could respond, I turned my gaze toward Karen, who had been silently watching this entire exchange. "What do you think, Karen?" I asked, my voice steady but sharp. "Should your mother risk her marriage for a month with her new lover?" She looked at me with a smirk of defiance and said, "She has her needs and desires. You don't own her. She's not your slave and is free to drink from any watering hole she wants." The arrogance in her tone hit me like a slap. It was clear. Karen wasn't just supporting her mother. She was reveling in telling me to go to hell. She wasn't neutral. She wasn't just watching. She was involved. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in the way she spoke. She was as much a part of this as Brenda, and I knew the whole truth. Karen would be going to Marcus's house too. The thought twisted something deep in my gut, but I kept my face composed. I raised both hands, a gesture of surrender. "Since both of you want this to happen, I won't be a roadblock in the grand scheme of things." Brenda's lips curled into a smile, a smug, satisfied expression that stung more than her words ever could. But I wasn't finished. With a calm, deliberate tone, I continued, "However, Brenda, I want you to sign a document stating that we will be separated for the next 30 days, officially and legally. I will not be responsible for you or your daughter financially or in any other way during that time, and I will be free to do as I please and take care of my desires." Brenda narrowed her eyes at me, her tone skeptical. "How does that work?" I leaned back in my chair, keeping my demeanor calm and composed. "I'll call my lawyer right now. He'll draft up the necessary documents, and we can go to the court tomorrow to make it official. Simple." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle before adding with a touch of sarcasm, "So, you see, I'm just clearing the path for you. You can go and be with Tom, Dick, or Harry for the next 30 days, and it won't be cheating, since we'll be separated." I let a faint smirk tug at the corner of my lips as I continued, "And I, in turn, can have my desires taken care of, with nothing holding me back." Her eyes narrowed further, suspicion flickering across her face. "Am I missing something here? Why are you doing this?" I rose slowly from my seat, looking down at her with an air of certainty. "Because Brenda, your words have already made it clear that you wouldn't have stopped, so there's no need for me to stop you." I gave her a small, calculated smile. "And frankly, I can use this opportunity to make the most of my desires." Karen smiled smugly and said, "Mom, it's a good idea. I didn't know Brian could support you like this." I turned to her, matching her arrogance with a calm smile. "Oh, you have no idea?" Without another word, I walked out of the room, my phone already in hand. I dialed my lawyer and kept it simple. "Do it." By the time the afternoon rolled around, my lawyer was sitting across from Brenda in our living room, papers spread neatly before her. She didn't even read the documents, just picked up the pen and signed them with a flourish, her confidence radiating from every gesture. I leaned back, watching her, and when she was done, I let the smallest smile curl my lips. "It's done now," I said evenly. "And it'll be finalized by tomorrow." That evening, I told Brenda I was heading out for a drink. I didn't bother explaining or making excuses. I simply left. I wasn't drunk when I returned hours later, but I made sure to come back late enough to avoid any interaction with her. The next morning, we found ourselves in the courtroom. Brenda stood beside me, her demeanor calm, her confidence unwavering. The judge glanced over the document, his expression neutral. "Mrs. Brenda Wilson, did you get this document checked with your attorney?" he said, looking up from the papers. "For the next 30 days, your husband will not be responsible for your or your daughter's financial support, and he can do whatever he likes to do. Are you okay with this?" Without hesitation, she nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge shrugged his shoulders and said, "Okay." That evening, Brenda was bustling around the bedroom, packing her bags with an energy I hadn't seen in months. Her face practically glowed with happiness, a stark contrast to the tension that had filled our home recently. I stood by the door, arms crossed, watching her with a detached expression. She looked up at me, her excitement spilling over. "Oh, thank you, Brian. You have no clue how happy I am. I'll make sure to make it up to you when I'm back." Her words were almost laughable, but I kept my composure. I smiled faintly and replied, "Oh, don't worry about that. I'll make sure I'm happy." With that, I turned and walked out, my footsteps steady, but my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Everything was set. Every detail accounted for. It was time to execute the plan. I've always prided myself on being a man of logic, someone who keeps emotions in check and focuses on rational solutions. But today, standing there, I felt an unfamiliar ache, a sense of loss gnawing at the edges of my resolve. It wasn't just Brenda I had lost. It was something deeper, something harder to define. But then again, she had already wrecked our marriage long before this moment. All my efforts to help her daughter, every bit of time, energy, and money I'd poured into trying to make life easier for them wasted. The new car I bought for her daughter, that hefty college fund I worked overtime to build. It all amounted to nothing. And for what? For her daughter to smugly tell me that I don't own her mother? Well, it sucks. But when has life ever promised to be a cakewalk? Newton's third law of motion? For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That fundamental truth of the universe still holds. And now, I intend to prove it with my reaction. That evening, Brenda left with her daughter to be with her ex-husband Marcus, and I made sure to wave them goodbye one last time. They deserved to see that goodbye. Once they were out of sight, I walked to the kitchen and grabbed the bottle of Jack Daniels from the cabinet. I poured myself a large one, added a few cubes of ice, and took a small sip, letting the warmth of the alcohol slide down my throat. It was the only thing that felt familiar at this moment. Then I picked up the phone and made the call. "It's time." "It's all done," I said, my voice steady. "Let's start the show." The next morning, I woke up with a clear plan. The first thing to go was the car I had bought for my wife's daughter. It was a Honda, a car she had loved when she first saw it, even if she had grumbled about the color. She said it wasn't her favorite, but that didn't matter now. Tough luck. She could now pick whatever color she wanted for her next car, and hopefully her father, Marcus, could buy it for her. Next, I turned my attention to my wife's car. The one she adored. She'd always flaunted it, acted like it was the best thing I could have ever done for her. Well, too bad. She never once appreciated the man who worked tirelessly to give her what she wanted. Now, for the next 30 days, Marcus can handle her transportation. I won't be the one to provide the comfort anymore. As for the house, it was big, too big for them. I had heard them complain enough about it over the years. They always talked about how they wanted something smaller, cozier, like the house Marcus had. Well, they're already living in one now, so might as well make that permanent. It's not like they'll be coming back to this one anytime soon. By the end of the day, I had what I needed. $2 million in my hands, or more accurately, in my offshore account. No more sacrifices. Now I could finally do what I wanted, without anything or anyone holding me back. 3 days passed, and the silence was almost peaceful. But then, the phone rang again. It was Brenda. Her voice was shaky, like she was trying to keep her composure, but the panic was still evident. I called the house, but no one answered. "Where are you?" I couldn't help but smile, the irony not lost on me. I picked up my drink, took a slow sip, and without missing a beat I replied, "Taking care of my desires." And with that, I ended the call, cutting her off before she could respond. That evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop. First it was Brenda, then Karen. Both were calling repeatedly. It was clear they were furious and likely frantic. I had a good guess why. They must have gotten the notifications from the bank by now. The joint account was empty, the college fund gone. I could almost hear the shock in their voices, and I understood why. They had no idea what had hit them, but honestly, how could I take care of my desires when all my money was tied up in those accounts? Still, I didn't pick up immediately. The calls kept coming, but I didn't respond. Let them stew for a while. Let them process the mess I'd left behind. It took another 3 days, 3 long days, of constant ringing before I finally decided to answer the phone. "Hey, Brenda, how are you?" I said, my voice calm, almost casual. "Sorry, I was busy getting my desires catered to, so I couldn't answer your calls." She didn't hold back. The insults, the accusations, the guilt trips, they all came pouring out in a relentless stream. Every verbal garbage you could imagine, and even some things that left me scratching my head in disbelief. But honestly, she had every right to be angry. I wasn't expecting sympathy. I just sat there, listening, waiting for her to finish. And once she finally fell silent, I knew it was time. I guess it's not the time to talk. Bye. I hung up before she could get another word in. That went on for 5 days, 5 straight days of her screaming and me hanging up, each call more frantic than the last. It was almost predictable at this point. But on the 6th day, when I picked up, there was a noticeable shift. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't spewing her anger at me. Instead, there was a calmness in her voice. She asked, "Why did you take away all the money?" I leaned back, took my time with the answer. "Well, living in a 5-star hotel in Jamaica costs a lot. How do I pay for it? Unless I empty your daughter's college fund that I paid for." "What? That was my dream vacation. How could you do this to me?" She was livid. "Well, my desire was for you to remain faithful to me. That did not work out well. So I got the next best thing, a vacation in Jamaica with a young blonde Russian woman to keep me company." Brenda's voice cracked with fury as she screamed, "You will not get away with this. Once I am back, I will make you pay." I could feel her rage through the phone, like it was burning right through the line. Honestly, it didn't faze me. I'd expected it. She was always like this, overreacting to things, the same old drama, but it wasn't the kind of emotion I wanted to deal with right now. I wasn't in the mood for a fight. Not with her, not with anyone. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the phone. "I guess you're angry," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. "Not the kind of emotion I want to deal with right now." Before she could say anything more, I pressed the end call button. There was no need for any more of her threats. Not today. A month had nearly passed, and now it was time to move on to the next phase of my plan. I boarded the plane, and I had a clear destination in mind. And it wasn't just another getaway. No, this was something bigger. Thailand. Back when I was working as a software analyst, I had frequently been offered a partnership at a firm in Bangkok. At the time, I'd brushed it off, not feeling the need for anything more. But now, with nothing really tying me down back home, nothing left that mattered, I figured, why not? So I'd accepted their offer, and here I was on my way. The plane ride was long, but it gave me time to think. To reflect on everything that had led me here. When the wheels finally touched down, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. I had made my choice. I had moved on. I landed in Bangkok. I switched on my phone and immediately called my lawyer. "She'll be back today. Please give her my gift." It was time for everything to unfold. Later that evening, Brenda and Karen returned home, or what they used to call home. I couldn't help but imagine the look on their faces when they saw what awaited them. At the door, a man was already standing, waiting. He approached them with calm professionalism. "Hello, are you Mrs. Brenda Wilson?" he asked. She nodded, her face a mixture of confusion and dread. "You've been served?" The man handed her a manila envelope, stood back a few feet, and snapped a picture before walking away without another word. The image, the moment captured in that brief flash, was still the best thing I'd seen in a while. There she was, Brenda, holding that envelope, her face crumpling as tears started to fall. And Karen, she stood beside her, looking utterly shocked, her eyes scanning the driveway. "Dude, where's my car?" she asked, her voice quivering. As I predicted, the phone call started. I let them ring through, waiting until I was in the comfort of my hotel room before I dialed her number. I didn't even need to say anything. She picked up almost immediately, and before I could say a word, she exploded. "You are not an honorable man. You're jealous of Marcus. You couldn't handle your ego." Her voice was shrill, a steady stream of insults, the same ones every cheating wife throws when caught. I didn't interrupt her. I didn't even flinch. I just listened. This time I wasn't hanging up. I wasn't running from it. I waited for my turn. "Did you open the envelope?" I asked, my voice steady. There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by the sound of rustling paper. Inside were the images of her and Marcus having sex with timestamps and locations, even the ones where she was tied on the bed. You knew all this time," she said, her voice faltering for the first time. "Oh, yes," I said calmly. "I did." I could almost hear her processing it, the weight of the truth sinking in. "Since you made your bed," I continued, "I made sure you'd sleep in it. You did not try to stop me." She said, "Oh no, why should I stop you? Once you decided to cheat, you ended our marriage. Besides, why would I choose between a cheating bitch and a vacation in Jamaica? The next part was almost too easy. The divorce has been filed under adultery, and I've left some money in the joint account. Hopefully that will be enough for you to reach Marcus's house. I could feel the tension on the other end, the raw anger, but I didn't care. The ball was no longer in her court. Her voice screeched through the phone, raw and desperate. You didn't leave any money for your daughter? How will she go to college? I didn't hesitate. She will not, I shot back. Not on my money. She's not my daughter. Her actions have proved that time and again. She can go to college on her father's money. There was a long pause before I heard the phone being snatched away. Karen's voice came through next. And once again, I was bombarded with the same barrage of screams and insults. I knew what this was. I knew it would be the last conversation, the last time I'd hear from either of them. So, I endured it. Then, in a voice that wavered between rage and disbelief, Karen said, "You sold my car." "No, I sold my car," I shot back, not even flinching. "You took away my college fund," she cried, the desperation clear in her voice. I couldn't hold back the bitterness anymore. "No," I replied coldly. "I made sure I had money to fund my desire for a Jamaican vacation. Besides, it was money, and I took it back." And then, without missing a beat, I added, "As you said, your mother can drink from any watering hole. So can I." She screamed again, her voice shaking with anger and frustration. "What will I tell my friends? My car is gone." I didn't even flinch. "Tell them your loser's stepfather sold it to fund his Jamaican vacation. And now I'm going back to live with my winner biological father." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end before Brenda snatched the phone back. Her voice was dripping with accusation. "You stole our money. I'll call the cops." "Please, go ahead," I said, my tone completely calm. "You signed that legal document that waived my financial responsibility towards you. I spent the money within the 30 days, and now I'm broke." She shot back immediately, her disbelief heavy in her words. "You want me to believe that?" I smiled. "I never asked you to believe me, but in court, I will prove that." I ended the call with a calm, final note. "For any further communication, please call my lawyer. His number is in the envelope. Have a good day, Brenda." A few days later, I knew that Brenda would try to fight the divorce, but I was confident in my lawyer's ability to handle it. Brenda claimed that I knew about her staying with her ex-husband and approved it. My lawyer then presented the images with timestamps and location, which was before the agreed 30 days. My lawyer said, "Your Honor, the fact that Mrs. Wilson was already sleeping with Mr. Parker before this 30 days period constitutes cheating, as Mr. Wilson was not aware of her infidelity. So the claim that my client knew beforehand and approved her cheating with her ex-husband is false. She lied to her husband and broke the trust of her husband. Also, my lawyer quickly proved that I had spent every last cent of my money on vacations in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Receipts, invoices, everything, it was all legit. Besides, Mrs. Wilson signed off her financial responsibilities during the 30-day period that she was with her ex-husband. The judge, though, wasn't naive. He knew the situation reeked of manipulation and deceit, but there was little he could do. The paperwork had been meticulously filed, and the legal process had been followed. His hands were tied, bound by the formalities of the law, even if he could see through the thinly veiled charade. He ordered that whatever asset remained be properly settled. That's when Brenda's lawyer, clearly desperate, tried to bring up child support. But my lawyer wasn't about to let that slide. With a firm tone, he immediately objected. He pointed out the obvious truth. Karen wasn't my daughter, not biologically, not legally. I had never adopted her, and the judge knew this was a crucial detail that rendered child support irrelevant. My lawyer didn't stop there, though. He went on to make a bold move, one that would only add to the absurdity of the entire situation. He argued that I had given up all my worldly responsibilities, having chosen the path of a Buddhist monk. No income, no possessions, no obligations. It was an audacious defense, but it worked. The judge, who'd been sitting stone-faced through most of the proceedings, couldn't help but almost laugh at the miraculousness of it all. He glanced at Brenda, his smirk betraying his amusement. "Tough luck, lady," he said, barely holding back his laughter. His words rang through the courtroom, echoing the finality of it all. "Can't help you further. The divorce is granted, and the joint account money is to be given to Brenda." A month after the divorce, I learned that Brenda and Karen had moved in with Marcus. The reality, however, was far from the picture they probably envisioned. It wasn't the happy family they'd hoped for. In fact, it was a repeat of the toxic, abusive cycle Brenda had long tried to escape. Marcus, in his drunken state, continued to beat Brenda like he had before during their marriage. But I guess Brenda liked it rough. And Karen? She was nothing more than a silent witness, powerless in the face of it all. Brenda couldn't leave him. She had no place to go, no support system left. She was stuck, trapped in the very nightmare I had once been part of. Karen now walks to school or takes the bus. No more luxuries, no more easy rides. The comfort they had enjoyed was gone. As for Marcus, my revenge on him was never meant to be violent. It was simple. I handed him what he wanted. Now he had to feed and take care of his new family, his wife for 30 days and her daughter. Let him deal with the consequences of his actions. Let him face the reality of the mess he had created. I'd given him exactly what he desired, but it came with a price. Sometimes you need to be careful of what you want. You might just get it.